Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to be here. Can I confirm that you guys can see my screen and hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great, thank you. So I, along with Judy Fredericks, am a statewide safety assessment evaluator program coordinator. And so I manage the program with Judy. Judy runs the day-to-day stuff, and people interact with her frequently with regard to registration questions and ID card questions. So I want to definitely make sure that people are aware that she is a huge asset to this program, and she's also available for any questions that you may have. But with regard to that, the program, we move forward and discuss the purpose of the safety assessment program. First and foremost, it's to relieve stress on the shelters. After an event like an earthquake and some of these larger fires in the wildland-urban interface that we've seen, there's a huge impact to shelters. And for earthquakes, though, the idea is to be able to get out there and augment the local jurisdiction's organic capabilities so that they can assess more structures in a quicker fashion. So in doing so, we're able to use some of the resources within the state's database of disaster service worker volunteers and get these people to return to their homes in a safer, in a much more comfortable fashion, so that they feel like somebody with the credentials has looked at their structure. Like I said, it's to augment the local jurisdiction's organic capabilities. So we do that by using construction professionals. We also offer certified training, and in training the volunteers, they get an idea of how the California Standardized Emergency Management System works, which you heard talked about earlier on by Sherry. We definitely use that. A lot of and I'll talk about that a little bit more. That is how the request goes up to the state to get the volunteers out to the area to deploy. We train them in some of the procedures, not just SIMS procedures and local jurisdiction procedures, but also procedures for how to conduct an assessment. We really want to try to help them understand what happens at the local level and what they can expect. We train them in trying to understand how to assess the structures and work in a team. Also, we offer other trainings, like a coordinator training that people can take after they take the evaluator training, if they want to learn how to do more of the pre-planning and also some of the planning that goes on while there is an event, and the use of the volunteers, the safety assessment evaluators, while they're there on the ground and doing the assessments of the structures. Additionally, we offer kind of a brief high-level overview of some of the resources that are available for these evaluators to be able to assess the structures. The main one that we go over is going to be the Applied Technology Council ATC 20 booklet. It's a field handbook that gives them the opportunity to look at some recommendations that have been gone through by engineering and construction professionals that helps them assess the structure a lot more quickly. So that kind of field manual is available from ATC, and you can contact them for it. We also help them to see what other resources are available that have been out there. We introduce them to some of the placards and kind of walk through how the placards are used and what's required for them. But we really do a lot to help them understand, get a very good idea of what is going to be expected of them in the field. The other purpose is also to enroll them in the Disaster Service Worker Volunteer Program. This is what enables a lot of the people to be able to go out, one, to volunteer to be able to help, but two, to be able to go out and be deployed and get them into the field to help out the local jurisdiction. As Dawn had mentioned, some of the reasons that this is done is for workers' compensation insurance. Also, it provides them immunity from liability. While it does provide them with immunity from liability, there are other areas that are mentioned in some of the engineering code that is out there that provides immunity from liability. Also, immunity from liability is provided through the Business and Professions Code for engineers and architects. The requirements to be in the safety assessment program or be listed as an evaluator in our database is that you first have to take the 6-hour course. And you have to be there through the whole thing. Right now, obviously, it seems like it would be very difficult for us to do those in person and ensure people are there, but we are doing webinars and requiring an exam after the webinar that people must pass in order to be able to receive the ID card and be listed in our database to be able to be called upon should there be a disaster where we need evaluators to go out and assess structures. As Don mentioned, there's a registration form. We use a different registration form, but require the same information that is needed on the disaster service worker volunteer registration form. So because we have a need to know more specific information about the individual's credentials, we have included, we've added to the disaster service worker volunteer registration form. Additionally, to stay in it and in the program, you need to renew every 5 years. So that can be done by going into an in-person class or registering online with our learning management system and taking the online refresher course. We do send out emails 2 to 3 months prior to somebody's certification expiring. So if people do see, they will get all the information they need at that time to be able to go out, to be able to go into the LMS and register and take that online refresher course. In addition to those 3 things, we also require people to have licensure. So as an architect, an engineer, a geologist, an engineer can be an engineering geologist, it can be a geotechnical engineer, it can be a civil engineer or a structural engineer. What we're looking for with licensure and certification is that people can identify load paths and be able to determine if the structure can resist the horizontal and vertical loads that would come after an aftershock, or just in general, to make sure that the building is safe for somebody to enter. So with that kind of in mind, we do take certifications, or we do recognize certifications from the International Code Council. We commonly refer to these as building inspector types, but there are numerous ones that are there. And you can see a whole list of those on our webpage to be able to see if you have people, or if you are interested in becoming a safety assessment evaluator, if you would be eligible to receive an ID card and be able to be deployed to independently tag structures. Next is the process to request the resources. So bearing in mind that all of this works through the SIMS, the California Standardized Emergency Management System, where everything starts local and ends local, and that if a disaster grows in size, then the need can be requested through SIMS to be able to help address the disaster. So first off, the locals must identify the need. So as I mentioned earlier, we have a coordinator course that we offer, and in that coordinator course, we go through some arithmetic on how to be able to determine how many safety assessment evaluators would be needed in a disaster. Once the locals have determined the number of evaluators that they need, they then look to mutual aid. And mutual aid can come through just, if it's at the city level, say the disaster is at the city level, and a city is looking to request mutual aid, they can look to neighboring cities. If they find out that say the neighboring city is overwhelmed as well, and they're going to be using all of their organic resources to be able to address the disaster within their jurisdiction, they can reach out to the county, and then they can try to work the request through the county. And if they again determine that the county's resources are all tapped out and they don't have any other existing MOUs outside of that, then they can reach up to the region through the contact at the regional ESC, Emergency Services Coordinator. Once it gets to the regional ESC, it's pretty much going to go straight to the state for that. And if it's a large enough event, even if it's the small ones, I've been in contact with the building departments already, and so I'm pretty well aware that there is a request coming, and we've already began to source it. So once the request gets to myself or Judy, we will begin reaching out to our disaster contacts. We work with private organizations to be able to use the volunteers and contact them and sort of delegate some of those responsibilities to make the request and the identification of the volunteers a little bit more quicker. So once we get those names back, then I will begin putting together the list of names to be able to send out to the requester so that they know who to expect. Once that's done and we send them out and deploy them, they go straight out to the field when they're told to go and when they're expected to be there. Kind of recapping that though, just get a little bit more specific on it, is that the input for the request goes into Cal EOC. My understanding of it is that is at the county level. What's important about that though is that which ESF, emergency support function, it is put under. And it's important that it goes under ESF3, construction and engineering. Any requests for safety assessment evaluators will go under ESF3, construction and engineering. Very important to know the 5 W's in there, and being able to tell them where to go, how many you need, what type of engineer you need, what types of engineers you need, anything that you can think of that would definitely help us to better source that request will help us enable you guys to be able to recover quickly. So, for instance, we've had requests for bridge engineers. We do have some that we have identified in our database as bridge engineers, and we can reach out to them and see if there are some available to be able to go and assess bridges if need be. Lastly, and very important, is the Memorandum of Understanding. This is something that we have on our website. Also, CalBO, California Building Officials, has it on their website. It is something that was identified during, or I should say after the Napa earthquake, where it's under a federal declaration, it's necessary for reimbursement purposes. And the language has already been looked at by all the parties, and we've used it several times since Napa, and we haven't had any issues with it. But definitely we want to make sure that that Memorandum of Understanding gets signed prior to the deployment of the evaluators, or not too long after they get on scene. We just don't want it to slip through the cracks and jeopardize any eligibilities for reimbursement. So that is definitely one of the things I want to highlight as important. Some of the items to consider under the deployment of them is safety assessment is eligible under public assistance for reimbursement. What's important to note is that there is a difference between safety assessments and damage assessments. And the key difference in this is that the damage assessments are assigning a dollar value to it. None of the safety assessment evaluators should be assigning dollar values to the damage that they see. They should just be looking at the structure and its safety and its ability to provide safety after the earthquake. Anything outside of that is jeopardizing eligibility. Next to consider is just the requesting jurisdiction will bear all the costs. That's part of the Memorandum of Understanding. And so they need to be able to identify lodging, need to identify travel and food. We can help, try to coordinate some of that with other entities if need be. but the requesting jurisdiction will be the entity bearing the costs for this. Also important to consider is just requirements for reimbursement. And I can definitely discuss more of this at the time of an incident, but there are different requirements for reimbursement from public assistance and within your internal accounting departments. And it seems, unfortunately, that the accounting departments kind of get left out of that conversation during this, but it's very important to talk to them ahead of time and see, hey, what is it that we need to be able to, from these people who are deploying here, to be able to, validate the claims or the expenses that they're incurring on behalf of the county or the city. So make sure that discussions are had with the accounting department, but also talk with myself or one of our disaster assistance program specialists in the public assistance division, and they can help outline some of the key important factors that you will need to address and make sure that you're not jeopardizing or you have everything as you need to be able to claim for reimbursement. And then lastly, to consider is how the evaluator is going to be managed. It's very important that, because there's going to be a lot of work, and just to kind of give some sort of perspective on what happened during Northridge, they had deployed about 2,400 evaluators over the course of 16 days to Northridge, and there were on the order of hundreds, 100, 200, 300 per day doing these evaluations. So that is one of the reasons why we do the safety assessment program coordinator training, is to be able to get people at the local level who have the training to be able to know how to pre-plan and also how to manage some of the evaluators once they're there on scene. So if you have identified people that need that training, it can be offered by us. And there are other trainers out there that we have listed on our website who are able to do the coordinator training as well. So that concludes my presentation. Right there is my email, and you can find me on our website and find a lot of resources that we have there as well. And so I welcome you to go there and see if there's not already an answer to your question there, or if you would like to, by all means, you can reach out to me or Judy, whose email I didn't put on here, but she is also on our website, and you can reach out to her with any questions that you may have. So that is all I have, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to do this and look forward to talking to you guys in the future.